Scattered across jungles, deserts, oceans, and mountains lie the lost blueprints of humanity. Cities built by ancient hands, buried by time, and rediscovered against all odds. Some were rediscovered by accident, others took centuries. But every one of them changed what we thought we knew about the world. Vanished beneath vines, sand, and sea, lost to time, war, disaster, and then, piece by piece, brought back to light. This is the cinematic journey of 20 civilizations that vanished, then reappeared. At 7,970 feet above sea level, in the folds of the Andes, the clouds thin like curtains pulled back, revealing stone upon stone, balanced impossibly atop a mountain ridge. Terraces cascade down sheer cliffs. Llamas graze where priests once walked. This is not just a city, it's a sanctuary in the sky. And for nearly 400 years, no one outside the Andes even knew it existed. Machu Picchu was never truly lost to local indigenous communities, but to the outside world, it was a phantom. Hidden by jungle, altitude, and myth. When American explorer Hiram Bingham arrived in 1911, guided by Quechua locals and tipped off by a farmer, he expected to find Vilcabamba, the last Inca refuge. What he found instead would rewrite history. This mountaintop citadel, built in the mid-15th century by the Inca, had survived centuries of conquest, climate, and collapse. Its dry stone walls, so precisely cut they need no mortar, still stand. Archaeologists have uncovered temples aligned with solstices, ritual baths, royal chambers, and yet there are no Inca records explaining it. Was it a royal retreat, a religious site, a celestial observatory? Its purpose remains debated. Its silence is part of the spell. Even more staggering is what wasn't found. No signs of destruction, no battle scars. It was as if the city simply stepped away from history. Surrounded by steep cliffs and cloaked in cloud forest, Machu Picchu appears not just remote, but otherworldly. A civilization's dream preserved in stone, then surrendered to the jungle, only to re-emerge untouched. And this was just the beginning. The next city wasn't high in the clouds, but buried beneath them, and discovered by pure accident. Imagine renovating your home, knocking down a wall, and discovering an entire city behind it. That's exactly what happened in 1963, in the Cappadocia region of central Turkey. A man searching for extra space broke through his basement wall and revealed a passageway. It led not to a storage room, but to a hidden world underground, a city carved into volcanic rock, 18 stories deep, large enough to house 20,000 people. This is Derinkuyu, a subterranean metropolis. Unlike anything else on Earth, built as early as the 8th century BCE, possibly by the Phrygians or early Anatolian peoples. The city was later expanded by early Christians fleeing Roman persecution. Entire civilizations took shelter here. Schools, wineries, stables, ventilation shafts, wells, all carved by hand, all concealed below the surface. What makes Derinkuyu so extraordinary isn't just its scale, it's the engineering. A 180-foot deep ventilation shaft circulated air to the lowest levels. Massive stone doors, like millstones, could be rolled shut to seal off passageways in the event of invasion. Wells tapped into fresh groundwater, independent of the surface. It was a survival system, designed for siege. And yet, there are no historical texts documenting its construction. How was this feat achieved without modern tools? Why was it kept secret for so long? And how many more like it remain hidden in the rock? Derinkuyu wasn't built for the living. It was built to preserve life from a collapsing world above. Today, its upper levels are open to the public, but the full extent of the underground remains uncharted. Some believe dozens more subterranean complexes lie beneath Cappadocia, connected by tunnels yet to be explored. Next, we move from the depths of the earth to a city that once rivaled Rome and was buried not by war, but by fire and ash. The eruption came without warning. In just 24 hours, life in a thriving Roman city was extinguished, not by sword, not by siege, but by the sky itself. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, it buried Pompeii under 15 feet of ash and pumice. And in doing so, it preserved it. For over 1,600 years, Pompeii lay hidden beneath the surface of southern Italy. A bustling Roman port city turned to myth. Until 1748, when workers digging a canal accidentally struck ancient ruins. What they uncovered would become one of the most haunting archaeological windows into antiquity ever found. Streets frozen in mid-motion, villas still decorated with mosaics and murals, tables set for meals never eaten, even loaves of bread preserved in ovens. But most chilling were the voids, hollow spaces in the hardened ash. Archaeologists poured plaster into them and revealed the final forms of Pompeii's victims, men, women, children, pets, caught mid-run, mid-embrace, mid-prayer. Pompeii wasn't just a city, it was a time capsule, a moment sealed by catastrophe. Its preservation is so complete that archaeologists have reconstructed not only its layout, but its daily life, graffiti on walls, food stalls, bathhouses, and even political slogans still scrawled in Latin. And yet, for centuries, no one knew it was there. Today, visitors walk the same basalt streets Romans did 2,000 years ago, between shops, forums, and theatres, as if the city had merely paused. But Pompeii was never alone in vanishing. Across the sea, another city carved itself into desert cliffs and disappeared just as mysteriously. First, there's the silence. Then the walls of the canyon begin to close in, twisting, towering, carved by water over centuries. And suddenly, it opens. Framed by stone, glowing red in the morning sun, the treasury. For over 1,000 years, no outsider knew it existed. Petra, the once mighty capital of the Nabatean kingdom, thrived more than 2,000 years ago. Nestled deep in the desert of modern-day Jordan, this city was a marvel of commerce and engineering, linking Arabian incense routes with Roman roads. The Nabateans were desert masters. They didn't just survive the arid landscape, they transformed it. Petra's survival depended on one thing: water. Through an intricate system of dams, cisterns, and hidden channels, they collected every drop of rain the desert gave them. But Petra wasn't built to last forever. After a series of earthquakes and the collapse of trade routes, the city faded. By the 6th century, it was abandoned, its temples and tombs left to wind and sand. For centuries, only local Bedouins knew its secret. That is, until 1812. Disguised as an Arab pilgrim, Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt convinced a local guide to lead him through the Siku. What he saw changed archaeology forever. More than 800 monuments have since been uncovered. Theaters, palaces, royal tombs, entire streets carved into rose-red cliffs. And perhaps the most astonishing, no mortar, no scaffolding, just chisel and will, cutting through sandstone with timeless precision. Petra defies logic, it defies gravity, and even now, vast parts of the city remain buried beneath rock and time. From cliffs of stone to temples swallowed by trees, we travel next to a jungle where ancient towers rise above the canopy, and a forgotten empire left its mark on the world. The jungle doesn't knock, it swallows. It crept slowly, root by root, vine by vine, until it took everything: roads, towers, statues. Entire temples dissolved into green. For centuries, the world forgot that the Khmer Empire had once ruled here, until the 1860s, when French explorers heard whispers of a stone city deep in the Cambodian jungle. What they found was not a city, but an entire world lost. At its height, between the 9th and 15th centuries, Angkor was the largest pre-industrial city on Earth. Spanning over 400 square miles, it was home to nearly 1 million people, sustained by sophisticated canals, reservoirs, and agricultural systems that turned monsoon rains into an engine of empire. The crown jewel, Angkor Wat, a colossal temple complex built in the early 12th century. Dedicated initially to the Hindu god Vishnu, it later transformed into a Buddhist sanctuary, and still functions as one today. Its design mimics the cosmos. Its towers echo the peaks of Mount Meru. Every stone is a scripture. But the jungle had other plans. By the 1500s, as the empire weakened and wars raged, Angkor was slowly abandoned. Nature reclaimed what man had made. Trees shattered rooftops, roots strangled pillars. Entire courtyards disappeared under leaf and loam. It wasn't until colonial explorers returned that the world rediscovered what lay hidden beneath the canopy. And even today, satellites are revealing new ruins still lost to the forest. Perhaps no place captures Angkor's haunting majesty better than Ta Prohm. There, massive silk cotton trees grow directly from temple walls, their roots coiled like serpents, as if the earth itself is pulling the past back underground. Angkor isn't just a ruin, it's a reminder that even the most powerful civilizations can be erased and reborn in stone. Next, we go to a city no one built on land or mountain, but on the ocean itself, a city of stone islets and tidal canals, forgotten in the waves of the Pacific. There are no roads here, no farmland, no mountains, only water, and more than 90 artificial islets built from black volcanic basalt, rising from a tidal lagoon like the ruins of Atlantis. This is Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific, a megalithic city, abandoned, ocean-worn, and still unmatched. Built between the 8th and 13th centuries off the coast of Pompeii in Micronesia, Nan Madol was once the ceremonial and political center of the Saudeleur dynasty, an empire that ruled these remote islands through both mysticism and might. But how it was built remains one of archaeology's most enduring questions. Over 750,000 tons of basalt stone were transported, somehow, across coral reefs and open sea, then stacked into seawalls, tombs, and temples. The largest stones weigh up to 50 tons. No cranes, no wheels, no metal tools. Oral tradition speaks of sorcery, of stones that flew through the air. And though archaeologists believe bamboo rafts and manpower were likely involved, no definitive method has ever been confirmed. Nan Madol was more than an island city. It was a spiritual gateway, a place of ritual, of burial, of power. Its layout divided the elite and religious from commoners, forming a sacred geography of class and cosmology. But by the 16th century, the city was abandoned. Oral histories tell of rebellion, of rulers feared more than worshipped. Over time, the jungle pressed in, tides rose, and the sea began to reclaim its kingdom. When European explorers arrived in the 19th century, Nan Madol was a ghost city, its walls half submerged, its origins cloaked in myth. Today, it remains largely unexcavated. Beneath the water and the coral lie clues, perhaps to an empire even older than we know, perhaps to how civilizations once shaped the sea itself. But not all lost cities were sunken or swallowed. Some simply vanished, until satellite imagery traced ancient footsteps across the sands of Arabia. In Islamic legend, it was called Iram of the Pillars, a city so proud, so decadent that God cast it into the sand as punishment. A tale of arrogance swallowed by the desert. A myth, until satellites told a different story. In the early 1990s, NASA's Landsat imagery revealed faint lines cutting across Oman's Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter. These were not dunes. They were ancient caravan routes converging on a single, forgotten point. Beneath the sand, archaeologists uncovered the remnants of Ubar, a trading outpost at the heart of the frankincense route, one of the ancient world's most valuable commodities. For centuries, camels carried the resin from Dhofar to Rome, Egypt, and India, and Ubar was the hub. But this was no grand metropolis. Likely a fortified oasis, Ubar's strength was its position, controlling the flow of wealth through the most unforgiving terrain on Earth. With walls of stone and towers for defense, it endured. Until it didn't. The city collapsed into a sinkhole, literally. Limestone caverns beneath the foundations gave way, swallowing part of the site into the earth. Ubar wasn't just forgotten. It disappeared physically, pulled under by the ground it stood on. What remained was legend. For centuries, Bedouins spoke of a lost city cursed by the heavens. When Western explorers tried to find it, they failed. Lawrence of Arabia called it the Atlantis of the sands. But in truth, it was real, and its story far more complex than myth. Today, the excavation site near Chichen has revealed artifacts, pottery, and foundations. Enough to confirm Ubar's reality, though its full scale remains debated. Was it a city, a fort, or a network of outposts? No one knows for sure. From the shifting sands of Arabia, we head to the green inferno of South America, where a jungle trek, a looter's discovery, and ancient stone terraces revealed a city older than Machu Picchu. The path isn't marked. It's carved by machete, by memory, by the feet of the few who still know it. 4 days through dense jungle, across rope bridges and waterfalls, up 1,200 moss-covered steps. And suddenly, stone terraces appear, spiraling like galaxies across a mountainside. The lost city, Ciudad Perdida. Built around 800 CE, 6 centuries before Machu Picchu, Ciudad Perdida was the heart of the Tairona civilization. A people of astronomers, engineers, and artisans who once thrived in Colombia's highland jungle. They called the city Tayuna. For centuries it flourished, hidden in the clouds and protected by steep terrain and sacred belief. Then came conquest, disease, collapse. The Tairona vanished into oral tradition, and the jungle sealed the city's memory. For over 1,000 years, Ciudad Perdida remained untouched, until 1972, when treasure hunters stumbled upon a flight of ancient stone stairs and gold artifacts buried in forest soil. What followed was a looting frenzy. Grave robbers desecrated sacred grounds, artifacts were sold, scattered. It wasn't until archaeologists intervened in the 1980s that excavation began. Carefully and with input from indigenous Kogi people, who still see Tayuna not as a ruin, but a living spiritual center. Ciudad Perdida isn't built atop a mountain. it's built into one. Hundreds of terraces follow the contours of the land like earthen waves. Circular plazas once held houses, council rings, and temples. A vast network of stone paths connects them, part of an ancient system called Caminos Reales. And yet, 95% of the city is still hidden under vegetation. What we see is only the beginning. Access is still by foot. A multi-day jungle trek, muddy, steep, and unforgettable. There are no cars, no roads, only silence, mist, and the rhythmic rise of ancient stone under your boots. But not all cities were lost in the jungle. Some were lost beneath water, so deep no one touched them for 2,000 years. Until divers in the Mediterranean stumbled onto statues the sea had kept intact. For centuries, it was a rumor, a name on coins, a whisper in ancient texts. A city so crucial to Egyptian trade, yet so completely gone. Many believed it had never existed at all, until 2000, when divers brushing silt from the seafloor uncovered a colossal statue face. Staring back at them from beneath the Mediterranean. Welcome to Thonis-Heracleion, Egypt's Atlantis. Once a thriving port city near the mouth of the Nile, Heracleion, called Thonis by the Egyptians, was the gateway between Egypt and the Mediterranean world. Long before Alexandria rose, this was where incoming ships were inspected, taxed, and granted entry. It was a center of wealth, ceremony, and cross-cultural contact. Ancient historians like Herodotus mentioned it. Artifacts referenced it. But no one had seen it for 2,000 years. Why? Because Heracleion had literally sunk. Around the 2nd century BCE, a combination of rising sea levels, earthquakes, and soil liquefaction caused the city to collapse and slip beneath the waters of Abukir Bay. Gone. Forgotten. Until French marine archaeologist Frank Goddio led a team equipped with magnetometers, sonar, and patience, and found it. What they uncovered was astonishing. 64 ships, hundreds of anchors, dozens of statues, inscribed steles, ceremonial artifacts. And a submerged temple to Amun-Gereb, its columns still standing. Among the finds were 16-foot granite statues, perfectly preserved thanks to layers of protective silt. Even the city's layout, canals, causeways, and harbor walls, remains visible underwater, like the ghost of a metropolis on the seafloor. Thonis-Heracleion rewrote Egypt's map, and perhaps more profoundly, it reminded us that what is buried by nature isn't always lost forever. Sometimes, the past floats back to the surface. Next, we return to land, but not the open air. this time to a place of carved silence, where temples were not built, but excavated down into a mountain of stone. There are no bricks here, no timber, no scaffolding remains, because nothing was built upward. Instead, entire churches were carved downward, hewn directly into volcanic rock, hollowed out from a single stone mass, as if sculpted by giants. This is Lalibela, the city of stone miracles. Commissioned in the 12th century by King Lalibela of the Zagwe dynasty, this holy city was designed to be a new Jerusalem, a place of pilgrimage in response to the fall of the original Jerusalem to Muslim forces. Legend claims angels helped carve it. What archaeology shows is nearly as unbelievable. 11 churches, each monolithic, stand connected by a maze of trenches and tunnels. Some are cross-shaped, others lie hidden in deep courtyards. All are chiseled entirely from the inside out. Roofs, walls, columns, and altars formed not by stacking stone, but by removing it. Among them, the most iconic, Beit Georgis, the Church of St. George. Viewed from above, it forms a perfect Greek cross, sunken into the ground, its edges sharp as if cut yesterday. What makes Lalibela even more extraordinary is that it was never lost. Local communities have continuously worshipped here for over 800 years. But it remained unknown to the outside world until Portuguese explorers and missionaries described it in the 1500s. And even then, few believed what they saw. Modern scholars still debate how such precise architectural feats were achieved with 12th century tools. No scaffolding, no external blocks, no margin for error. Each church had to be envisioned in reverse, the final form already alive inside the rock. Lalibela isn't just architecture, it's devotion rendered in stone. And today, pilgrims still walk barefoot through its passages, just as they have for centuries. Proof that what's carved in faith endures long after kingdoms fall. Next, we travel to a forest of stone pyramids, where a powerful African empire rose, ruled by queens and kings, and left behind one of the greatest lost cities south of the Sahara. In a land of savanna and granite, massive stone walls curve through the hills like echoes of something ancient and immense. No mortar holds them, no Western record acknowledged them for centuries. And yet, they've stood for nearly 1,000 years. This is Great Zimbabwe, the city that rewrote the history of African civilization. Built between the 11th and 15th centuries by the Shona people, Great Zimbabwe was the center of a powerful trading empire that reached across the Indian Ocean. At its height, the city likely held over 20,000 people, a bustling hub of gold, cattle, and craftsmanship. But it was the architecture that defied colonial expectation. Massive dry stone walls, some over 30 feet tall and 800 feet long, were constructed without mortar, their interlocking granite blocks arranged with geometric precision. Inside the great enclosure, conical towers and stone monoliths point to a complex spiritual and social order. A civilization with advanced engineering, political structure, and symbolic design. And yet, when European explorers first encountered the ruins in the late 19th century, their assumptions failed them. Victorian archaeologists refused to believe that sub-Saharan Africans had built something so monumental. They attributed the city to Phoenicians, Arabs, even aliens. Anyone but the people whose descendants still lived nearby. It wasn't until decades later that scholars, evidence, and indigenous oral history confirmed the truth. Great Zimbabwe was African-built, African-led, and uniquely African in design. Its decline remains a mystery, possibly due to overgrazing, water shortages, or shifting trade. But the legacy remains carved in stone, uncolonized by time. Today, the ruins are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the name Zimbabwe, meaning House of Stone, honors this ancestral city's defiance and brilliance. We ascend into Mesoamerica, where towering pyramids aligned with stars remain. Their creators unknown, their purpose still partially hidden beneath volcanic soil and mystery. It begins with a road, straight, wide, and ancient, the Avenue of the Dead. Flanked by ruins, it stretches for miles across a plateau. At its ends, two towering pyramids, rising like monuments to the cosmos. This is Teotihuacan, a city built before the Aztecs. By a people we still don't fully understand. Flourishing between 100 BCE and 550 CE, Teotihuacan was once the largest city in the Western Hemisphere, home to over 100,000 people at its peak. It was a metropolis of order, design, and astronomical precision, complete with neighborhoods, apartment compounds, waterworks, and sacred avenues. The Pyramid of the Sun, the third largest pyramid in the world, was aligned with the setting sun on the summer solstice. The Pyramid of the Moon anchored religious ceremonies and blood rites. And the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, a shrine to Quetzalcoatl, is adorned with stone serpent heads that seem to breathe through centuries of silence. Yet the identity of its builders remains unknown. No writing system has been discovered. No king's tomb unearthed. Unlike the Maya, Teotihuacan left no readable texts, only architecture, art, and mystery. By the time the Aztecs arrived in the 14th century, the city had already been abandoned for 800 years. They named it Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born, believing it was the birthplace of the fifth sun, the cosmic age in which they lived. Modern excavations have revealed underground tunnels, hidden chambers, and mysterious pools of liquid mercury, leading some to believe the city was as much a ritual center as a living one. But the reasons for its decline remain unclear. Fire, famine, rebellion, Signs of internal collapse mark the archaeological record. The gods were born here, and perhaps buried here too. Today, Teotihuacan stands as a riddle carved in obsidian and stone. A reminder that not all civilizations tell their stories in words. Some speak only in shadow, symmetry, and silence. Teotihuacan's builders remain nameless, their empire etched in stone, but their voices lost. Yet across a continent, deep in the jungles of Central America, another civilization rose. One that recorded time in stars, counted kings in glyphs, and left behind temples that still whisper to the heavens. The forest doesn't announce it. There's no grand approach. One moment, you're under the green cathedral of the Guatemalan rainforest. And the next, it's rising above the canopy. A stone pyramid piercing through mist and monkey calls. A city in the sky, forgotten beneath leaves for centuries. This is Tikal, one of the most powerful cities of the ancient Maya world. At its height between 200 and 900 CE, Tikal was a sprawling metropolis of temples, palaces, ball courts, and causeways. Home to over 100,000 people. It was not just a religious center, but a political and military powerhouse. Locked in complex alliances and rivalries with other city-states like Calakmul and Teotihuacan. But as the centuries turned, something changed. By the 10th century, Tikal was abandoned, its towering limestone pyramids consumed by jungle, its rulers forgotten. For generations, it lived on only in local memory. Western explorers didn't begin to map it until 1848. Even then, aerial photography in the 20th century revealed just how vast the city had been. Most of it still cloaked in trees. Climb Temple 4 and you'll stand above the jungle, looking out across the crowns of ancient stone monuments. These structures were precisely aligned with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, and the movements of Venus. To the Maya, time and architecture were inseparable. And the acoustics? Whisper at one end of the Great Plaza. And it can be heard 100 feet away, not a coincidence, but deliberate design. Today, Tikal rests within a UNESCO biosphere reserve, home to jaguars, toucans, and howler monkeys. It is a city returned to nature, but not erased. It lives, stone by stone, in both archaeology and ecology. Now we head to a solitary rock fortress, soaring from the jungles of Sri Lanka. where an ancient king carved his fear into stone and time carved it back into legend. From the forest floor, it looks like a monolith, a 660-foot pillar of granite erupting from the jungle. But climate and history changes. This was not just a rock. It was once a royal citadel, a fortress of paranoia, and a palace above the clouds. This is Sigiriya, the Lion Rock of Sri Lanka. In the 5th century CE, King Kashyapa seized the throne by force, fearing retaliation from the rightful heir. He moved the capital away from Anuradhapura to this sheer rock fortress. Where he believed height could protect him and design could intimidate. To reach the summit, visitors ascended through elaborate gardens, fountains, and frescoed galleries. A royal procession of engineered grandeur. Halfway up, the path narrows between two colossal lion's paws, the remnants of a gigantic stone lion that once guarded the approach. The symbolism was clear: power, majesty, and warning. The top of the rock held an entire palace complex, complete with water tanks, chambers, and panoramic views that doubled as early warning systems. But perhaps the most breathtaking legacy of Sigiriya lies in its frescoes, celestial maidens painted in vibrant mineral pigments, floating in cloud-like caves. Despite its ambition, Sigiriya's reign was brief. After Kasyapa's fall in battle, the citadel was abandoned and later converted into a Buddhist monastery. Over time, the jungle took it back. By the 14th century, Sigiriya was lost to the outside world. Its throne empty, its lion silenced. It wasn't until British officials in the 1830s spotted the summit, peeking through the canopy, that Sigiriya was reintroduced to the global imagination. Archaeological work continues to uncover the full complexity of its hydraulic systems, symmetry, and symbolism. Unmatched by anything else of its time. Today, it stands as a masterpiece of urban planning, landscape architecture, and psychological warfare, carved not just from rock, but from obsession. We now cross the sea to a shattered island, where ash preserved a civilization frozen in time, and whispers of Atlantis echo from beneath layers of volcanic glass. It happened in an instant, one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human history. A detonation that shattered an island, drowned cities, and altered global climate. But beneath the ash, a miracle. Streets, buildings, artwork, perfectly preserved, untouched for over 3,500 years. This is Akrotiri, the Minoan city many call the real Atlantis. Located on the island of Santorini, known in ancient times as Thera, Akrotiri was a thriving port city of the Minoan civilization, one of Europe's earliest. Around 1600 BCE, it was vibrant with multi-story homes, paved roads, pottery workshops, and indoor plumbing. Then came the cataclysm. The Thera eruption, one of the largest ever recorded, obliterated the island's center and buried Akrotiri under a thick layer of volcanic ash. The city was entombed but not destroyed. Unlike Pompeii, no human remains have ever been found, suggesting the inhabitants evacuated in time. What they left behind was a time capsule. Frescoes still adorn the walls. Dolphins leaping, women in flowing robes, ships sailing across red seas. Their vivid colors remain intact after more than 3 millennia. Storage jars sit where they were last used. Furniture impressions remain in place. Even toilets with plumbing, a technological marvel for its era. But perhaps the greatest mystery of Akrotiri is what's missing. No royal palace, no written records, no sign of who ruled or what gods they worshipped. Was Akrotiri a colony of Minoan Crete or its rival? Did it inspire the legend of Atlantis, as Plato hinted? Or was it simply one of many brilliant cities lost to time and tide? Excavations began in 1967, and they're still not finished. Much of Akrotiri remains unexcavated beneath Santorini's layers, waiting for another shovel of ash to reveal another untouched room. It is a city paused in its final breath, not destroyed but preserved by catastrophe. A place where we can walk the streets of the Bronze Age and hear the silence of survival. We now move to another city of stone and stars, where stepped pyramids align with the cosmos, and the shadows of ancient serpents still dance at sunset. At sunset during the equinox, a shadow slithers down a pyramid, a perfect serpent of light undulating across carved stone. This isn't illusion, it's design. Precision built into the bones of a lost civilization. Welcome to Chichen Itza, one of the most iconic cities of the ancient Maya. Flourishing between 800 and 1100 CE, Chichen Itza was a major political, economic, and religious hub. A city where architecture, mathematics, and astronomy converged with blood, power, and prophecy. Its most famous structure, El Castillo, also known as the Temple of Kukulkan, dominates the city's core. This step pyramid has 365 steps, one for every day of the solar year. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun casts a moving shadow along the northern stairway, forming the image of a serpent descending to earth. the feathered serpent god himself. But Chichen Itza is far more than a single monument. It hosts the largest known Mesoamerican ball court, where a sacred game was played, often ending in sacrifice. The acoustics are eerie. Clap at one end, and it echoes 9 times at the center. Speak softly, and it can be heard across the arena. These aren't tricks, they're calculations. Nearby lie sacred cenotes, natural sinkholes used for offerings and rituals. Archaeologists have recovered gold, jade, pottery, and human remains from the depths. These waters were believed to connect the surface world with the underworld, Xibalba. The city reflects both Maya and Toltec influences, suggesting a fusion or conquest that brought new gods and practices. Chacmuls, feathered serpents, and warrior columns appear alongside traditional Maya glyphs, hinting at a complex and shifting cultural identity. By the 13th century, Chichen Itza's influence waned. It was never fully lost. Local Maya communities remained nearby. But large-scale rediscovery didn't begin until the late 1800s. Excavations revealed not just architecture, but a worldview written in stone, where sky, shadow, and sacrifice shaped every structure. Today, Chichen Itza remains one of the most visited archaeological sites in the world, a testament to human ingenuity and to civilizations who saw time not as fleeting, but as something they could shape. From the jungles of Mexico, we journey to the windswept plains of Persia, where a city of columns and kings once held the world's greatest empire in its grasp. Built not for battle, but for glory, not to be lived in, but to be remembered. It was less a city, more a throne of the world. A stage upon which the wealth of nations paraded before the great kings of Persia. This is Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the Achaemenid Empire. Founded in the 6th century BCE by Darius the Great, Persepolis symbolized the vast power of an empire that stretched from India to Egypt, the largest the ancient world had ever seen. It was a city of diplomacy and divine kingship, where rulers received tribute from the farthest corners of their realm. The city's architecture was monumental by design, not in height, but in meaning. Carved terraces, staircases lined with reliefs, and vast columned halls rose from the desert, echoing both Babylonian and Elamite influences. At the heart stood the Apadana, a grand audience hall supported by 72 towering columns, each over 60 feet tall. Its walls bear the most iconic images of Persepolis. Processions of ambassadors and envoys bringing gifts from across the empire, golden vessels, exotic animals, precious stones. This was power expressed in pageantry. But Persepolis fell, not to time, but to fire. In 330 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered Persia and, according to some accounts, burned Persepolis in a drunken act of revenge. Others say it was symbolic, the destruction of an empire that had once tried to conquer Greece. What survived the flames were stone, shadow, and memory. Excavations began in the 1930s, revealing an astonishingly preserved city beneath the sands. Today, visitors can still walk the Gate of All Nations, gaze upon the winged bulls, and ascend the same steps once climbed by kings and emissaries. Persepolis remains one of the greatest testaments to imperial ambition and cultural fusion, a place where architecture was propaganda and stone spoke the language of empire. Next, we travel from an empire's ceremonial capital to a city of learning, commerce, and lost gods, where the echoes of Artemis still linger among marble ruins. It begins with silence, wind over columns, dust between stones. But listen closely, and you'll hear it. The footsteps of Romans, the chants of priests, the voice of the ancient world still whispering from the ruins. This is Ephesus, once one of the greatest cities of the Roman Empire. Now a vast open-air memory of civilizations layered in time. Founded in the 10th century BCE by Ionian Greeks, Ephesus grew into a powerful harbor city and cultural hub under both Greek and Roman rule. At its peak in the 1st century CE, it was home to more than 250,000 people. One of the largest cities in the Mediterranean, its centerpiece. The Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Though only a single column remains today, ancient accounts describe a structure so massive and ornate that it stunned even the most traveled visitors of antiquity. But Ephesus was not defined by a single building. It was a city of knowledge and performance. Walk its marble-paved streets and you'll find the Library of Celsus, a multi-story facade with niches once filled with thousands of scrolls, built to honor a Roman governor. Just beyond, the Great Theatre, with seating for 25,000, hosted everything from plays to political debates, and later, Christian sermons, including those attributed to St. Paul. Religion clashed and converged here. Pagan temples, Roman cults, early Christian churches. Ephesus was a crucible of belief, trade, and culture, a cosmopolitan frontier of the classical world. But time turned the harbor to silt. Earthquakes fractured its columns, and by the 15th century, Ephesus was abandoned. Its coastline receded, its fame buried. Rediscovered in the 19th century and still being excavated today, Ephesus reveals layers of beauty and brutality. Splendor and silence. A city where every column holds a conversation and every stone carries the memory of empire. We move on from the heart of empires to a city on the edge, where 1001 churches once echoed through the Caucasus, and silence now reigns over the wind-swept ruins. They called it the City of 1001 Churches, a medieval metropolis of stone domes and spires rising from the plains like a mirage. Today, it is a skeleton of sovereignty, a place where time stands still and history breathes through ruin. This is Ani, the once mighty capital of a vanished Armenian kingdom. Perched on a windswept plateau in eastern Turkey near the Armenian border, Ani rose to prominence in the 10th and 11th centuries when it became the royal seat of the Bagratid dynasty. At its height, it rivaled Constantinople and Cairo in wealth, culture, and military might. With a population estimated over 100,000, surrounded by a double wall and fortified gates, Ani was a marvel of medieval urbanism, but its true glory lay in its religious architecture. Dozens upon dozens of churches, each unique, graced the skyline. Some bore intricate reliefs and frescoes, while others showcased daring feats of stone vaulting and ornamented domes. The Cathedral of Ani, designed by Ciudad the architect, who later helped rebuild Hagia Sophia, stood as a masterpiece of early Gothic elements, centuries before Gothic architecture appeared in Europe. But Ani was built in a fragile geography, politically and geologically. Situated along trade routes and near imperial borders, it suffered repeated invasions. From Byzantines to Seljuks, Mongols to Ottomans. Earthquakes fractured its foundations. Trade routes shifted. And by the 14th century, Ani was abandoned. Its walls still standing, its sanctuaries silent. For centuries, Ani sat in no man's land, caught between nations, ideologies, and forgotten pages of history. Rediscovered and surveyed in the late 19th century by Russian archaeologists, Ani's ruins have since captivated historians, travelers, and photographers. but much remains unexcavated, hidden beneath grass and time. Today, it is a ghost city, a place of stark beauty and solemn awe. And when the wind howls through its hollow chapels, it carries the voices of kingdoms gone, prayers unanswered, and a glory not erased, only hushed. For the final chapter, we return to where time was carved, not built. A city not forgotten, but overlooked, still alive, still sacred, and still standing against time. There are no fallen stones here, no shattered columns, no broken gates, because nothing was ever built. Instead, entire churches were carved downward into the bedrock of belief. Hollowed from living stone, shaped by faith, untouched by conquest. This is Lalibela, the city of 11 monolithic churches, and the final breath of this journey. Commissioned in the 12th century by King Lalibela of the Zagwe dynasty, this holy city was envisioned as a new Jerusalem, a place where Ethiopian Christians could worship after the fall of the real one to foreign powers. But instead of constructing upward, they went deep, carving sanctuaries into red volcanic tuff with chisel, hammer, and prayer. Each church was shaped from a single block of rock, excavated from above and then carved inward. No bricks, no mortar, no seams, just devotion, sculpted in reverse. Among them, the most iconic, Bete Georgis, the Church of St. George. From above, it forms a perfect cross. From below, it feels like a descent into silence. It is not only a feat of engineering, it's a declaration of spiritual permanence. The churches are connected by trenches, tunnels, and narrow passageways, creating a subterranean network that mirrors ancient pilgrimages to the Holy Land. It is a city both earthly and divine, still pulsing with ceremony, incense, and ancient hymns. Remarkably, Lalibela was never lost. It was never buried, never forgotten. But for centuries, it was hidden in plain sight, known only to Ethiopians, revered by pilgrims, ignored by the world. That changed in the 19th century, when European travelers encountered it and were stunned by what they saw, calling it the eighth wonder of the world. Today, Lalibela remains alive. Priests still chant, worshippers still bow, pilgrims still walk barefoot across the same stone that has absorbed prayers for over 800 years. In a journey filled with cities lost and found, ruins buried and unearthed, Lalibela stands alone, never conquered, never silenced, never finished. And so we end where time folds, among stones that were never raised, but always there. A monument not to what was lost, but to what endures. We began with cities carved in cliffs and ended with sanctuaries carved from stone. Between them, empires lost to ash, kingdoms drowned by tide, civilizations swallowed by jungle, silence, and time. But these are not just ruins, they are messages, evidence of who we were, and hints of who we might become again. In every fallen gate, there's a question. In every buried city, a memory refusing to stay silent. These places were never truly lost. They were waiting for eyes to see them, for minds to understand them, for stories to bring them back to life. The world is vast. Its stories are deeper than borders. From forgotten cities to remote rituals, we film the places most never reach and reveal the truth behind the wonder. Subscribe to explore more. Discover ancient civilizations, untold histories, and natural marvels, all in cinematic 4K. Remember, travel farther, experience more.